Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The morning after, the number one prospect in the country commits to the Miami Hurricanes in Jackson Cantwell. There's a little bit more of a conversation that I want to have in terms of what this means for Miami. Now, let me start with this. Really frustrating last 12 to 18 hours on Twitter, on the message boards. The whole conversation around this recruitment, around this commitment is being dominated by NIL talk. Now, I think two things can be true. And I don't think there's many Miami Hurricane fans that are pushing back on the fact that, yeah, it sounds like Miami had the most aggressive offer for Jackson Cantwell when it comes to NIL. Yeah, that can be true. But at the same time, we can also recognize that there's a lot of other reasons for Jackson Cantwell to come to Miami outside of just taking the money and going to Miami. And you get on these message boards and you get on Twitter and you see people acting like Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal aren't some of the best in the game at developing offensive linemen over the last couple of years. That's what frustrates me the most. And look, if I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, I'm bookmarking some of these tweets. Like you're seeing these, fancy little screenshots of Wikipedia pages looking at Georgia's offensive lineman going to the NFL draft versus Miami's offensive lineman going to the NFL draft. And look, this is not a shot at this Georgia football program. I think we all recognize and we have a lot of respect for what Kirby Smart does, for what Stacey Searles does on the offensive line. Look, Georgia pumps him out to the NFL draft. Ain't no question mark about that. If I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, like I'm bookmarking some of those tweets and I'm revisiting those tweets in 12 months because I think there's a very good chance that Miami's putting three offensive linemen out to the NFL draft that probably go in the top 100. I'm talking about Francis Mauigoa. I'm talking about Inez Cooper. I'm talking about Markel Bell. Let's just go see how this looks in 12 months in terms of what Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal do, developing offensive linemen. And heck, just talk to the people who are connected in this sport and talk to them about the respect everybody has for Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal in terms of what they've done developing the offensive line. It's pretty common that you're going to hear there's a lot of respect for what they do. And then secondly, and this might frustrate me even more than people just acting like Miami doesn't develop offensive linemen. Like, how are we going to villainize a kid for going to a program that, yeah, offers him the highest level of compensation when, look, this is how the real world works. I've had coworkers that have left occupations, have left jobs because they've had a job that offers them a little bit more money. Nobody bats an eye. Nobody says that they're greedy for choosing another job that might compensate them a little bit more. But now we're going to look at this 17, 18-year-old kid saying he's going to Miami, taking more money, and we're going to act like he's some sort of villain. Like to me, how we villainize NIL, it's crazy. It's like we're not living in the real world because guess what? This is how the real world works. That's kind of my rant in terms of what we've seen on Twitter and what we've seen on the message boards over the last couple of hours, you might say. Now, the more important conversation here is what this means for Miami. Now, I think the first conversation is, look, this is a dynamite fit for Miami. Number two, this makes a lot of sense for the immediate future of this program. Is it worth it? Was it worth it for Miami to push their chips all the way into the middle of the table for a kid like Jackson Campbell? Is the conversation that we're going to get into. My short answer is yeah, it certainly was. Now, before we get into it, and as always, the Miami Hurricane fans, y'all, please let it fly in the comment section. Would love to hear, and even if there are some Georgia fans listening or some Oregon fans listening, it would love to hear your takes on the situation too. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start. Look, this is a dynamite fit in terms of the type of player going to the type of program. And I feel like there's this misconception around what Mario Cristobal wants to do with this program because of that 2024 year with Cam Ward. And I give Mario Cristobal a lot of credit because, Mario Cristobal historically wants to build this program from the inside out. He wants to dominate the line of scrimmage. He wants to run the football. Now in 2024, they went away from that. And it's not because they couldn't run the football. They were top 20 in the country in yards per carry last year. They just didn't run the football all that much because they had the best quarterback in the sport with a ton of talent on the outside. I think Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson quickly realized that Miami's passing attack in 2024 had the opportunity to be the best in the country, which it was. And they leaned into it in 2024. I would argue you're going to see almost the direct opposite in the 2025 year. You got one of, if not the best offensive lines in the country, with one of, if not the best running back rooms in the country, with a quarterback in Carson Beck that loves to work play action. I think you're going to see kind of a direct opposite. Miami wanted to throw the football a lot in 2024. I think they're going to want to run the football a lot in 2025. Mario Cristobal wants to have offenses that look like that. Jackson Cantwell is one of, if not the most powerful offensive lineman that I've seen come out of high school in a very long time. Kind of reminds you of Caden Proctor coming out from Iowa, going to Alabama a couple years ago. This is a guy that is just physically imposing. And it's not only the film, it's the throwing metrics, it's the weight room metrics. There are some stuff that needs to be cleaned up about Jackson Cantwell. There ain't no question mark about that. But the physical dominance that he has portrayed during his high school career, I think that was very appealing to Mario Cristobal because that's the kind of offensive lineman that Miami wants to build this program with. And so that's where it starts. Just go look at the kind of offensive lineman Miami has leaned into over the last couple of years. It's the big body road graders, and it doesn't get any more big body road grader than Jackson Cantwell. This kid is all of 6'7". He's all of 320 pounds. And I'll say this, there ain't a lot of bad weight on this kid's frame at 320. He carries that weight exceptionally well. Powerful kid. Number two, and this is why it really made sense for Miami to be super aggressive with Jackson Cantwell. There were not a lot of offensive linemen in this 2026 cycle. There's not a lot of offensive linemen, period, coming out of high school that you look at and say, hey, they have the opportunity to start year one. For Miami, I think they identified Jackson Cantwell as that guy and said, hey, there's a very good chance that Miami has to replace both offensive tackles going into the 2026 year. So if you have the ability to go out and get a guy that you think can start right away, but at the same time, prevent yourself from having to be really desperate in the transfer portal in 8 months, that makes a lot of sense. That's why you saw Miami get so aggressive, because not only are they landing the number one prospect in the country that's going to be on this roster for the next 3 to 4 years, probably only 3, but next 3 to 4 years, you also prevent yourself from having to go to the portal and get really desperate for a plug and play starting tackle. Because guess what? As much as Miami is paying Jackson Cantwell, you probably would have to pay a tackle a pretty penny to come in and start for you for 6 months in the 2026 season. I think that's the other conversation you have. And I kind of wanted to play around with, all right, what's this offensive line going to look like in 2026? I would argue that Jackson Cantwell comes in and probably he'd be my pick to start at right tackle immediately in the 2026 season. And then it gives you a little versatility for where you want to put Tommy Kinsler, who I think will be a starter for Miami in 2026. You have a couple of guards that you like. Matt McCoy coming back for one more year. SJ slotting into the center. Left tackle, it's probably going to be, if Markel Bell goes to the NFL draft, it's probably going to be Samson Okunlola and maybe Tommy Kinsler competing for that starting left tackle spot in 2026. I guess the whole point of this conversation I want to get into is you got a guy who is the number one prospect in the country, who very well could blossom into a top 5 NFL draft pick, very similar to how we talked about Francis Mauigoa a couple of years ago. But you also get a guy that can come in and immediately start for you in 2026. So what I mean by 2 birds, 1 stone is you land the top prospect in the country. That's always a good thing. But you also, it's almost like you're going into the transfer portal and getting a starter too, because you're getting a guy that can immediately come in, which is not the case with a lot of offensive linemen that you see coming out of high school. Now, I think technically there's probably some stuff to clean up for Jackson Cantwell. Physically, this kid's ready. And so if Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal get this kid coming in, I believe he's going to be a winter enrollee guy, although we'll have to see, because I know track and field means a lot for him as well. You want him coming in the winter because you want to get to work immediately and make sure this kid is ready by August 2026. That's why you saw Mario Cristobal get so aggressive, because I think they identified this kid as a guy that's not only going to be your anchor for the next couple of years, but immediately in 2026. Now, the next conversation is, what does this mean for 2026? Miami catapults into the top 10 rankings with only 10 commitments in the fold. This is really good timing for Miami as we get into these official visits. Talent attracts talent, and we see this all the time. We see teams get hot on the recruiting trail and they start rolling in. And if you're a Miami fan, you're hoping Jackson Cantwell, the number one prospect in the country, gets the ball rolling for a really big time summer for the Miami Hurricanes. The guy I immediately thought of is Derek Cooper. And this is sounding like it's going to be a Miami versus Georgia recruiting battle. Man, if you're Derek Cooper, it's like, who do you want to go run behind? You want to go run behind a guy like Jackson Campbell for the next couple of years. I've been very vocal. I think Derek Cooper's at the worst the second best running back in this class. I like Savion Hitter from Virginia a lot. Derek Cooper's neck and neck in terms of some of the best running backs in this 2026 cycle. He's an in-state kid, local kid. This can't do anything but help Miami's chances with a guy like Derek Cooper, because you're looking at Miami and saying, hey, I know the offensive line is going to be damn good for the 3-4 years that I'm going to be at Miami. Running behind Jackson Campbell don't sound all that bad. And so I look at it and say, it's obviously you love getting the number one kid in the country. You love that he can immediately come in and potentially be an answer for you at right tackle in 2026. And you love the momentum. You love the timing of this. Hey, we're rolling into official visit season, and Miami's got a little bit of momentum on the recruiting trail. That matters as well. We'll sign out there. We'll see what the ripple effects will be, and we'll kind of set up our dream class for Miami going into the official visits. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.